I'm here today with Mohamad Mirghahari, a good friend and someone that I respect a tremendous amount, who has decades of experience in the security field. Mo, thank you so much for joining today. Before we kind of get started, would just love maybe if you want to give the audience just a quick rundown of kind of what you're up to now and maybe a little bit about your background as well.
Sorry, thanks for having me. Mohamad Mirghahari. I'm currently the National Security Fellow at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. Previous in my career, I served in the Department of Defense supporting special operations for over 15 years. I did a presidential appointment in front office of TSA before leaving to go back into the private sector. Ever since, I've also become a subject matter expert at the Irregular Warfare Center based out of DC. And thank you for having me.
Honored to have you here. So let's just kind of get right into it. I think for those that have listened to the first few episodes, you'll know we're kind of asking the same six questions to people all across the space. So let's just start off with the first one, which was, have you ever had an interaction digitally where, you're talking to somebody and you just weren't sure that they are who they said they were? Like basically where you second guessed a digital interaction of any kind. We see that happening more and more, and I'm just curious if it's happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, as an old man I am from the college days on AOL, you don't know who you were talking to on the other side, and catfishing became big with MySpace and some of these platforms that a lot of the young people aren't aware of. But to today, where AI has changed things with the advent of deep fakes, voice copying, and various other things, you truly don't know who's on the other end of that call, text, message, email, unless you have a way to verify it. And as technology gets better and more accessible to people, how are you going to be able to authenticate that? And that's going to be a big issue going forward in business, in social interactions, in finance, and almost every facet of life at that point.
And within your experience sort of working in and out of DoD, like is this a problem that you think is worrying, our leaders there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been going on since the advent of social media, right? I mean, you have young soldiers deployed around the world. You have Russians, Chinese, and North Korean, and various other countries posing as females, eliciting information, eliciting troop movements, eliciting information from a counterintelligence perspective that is very important for us to protect. So I think as this becomes more complicated, it becomes more advanced and more efficient. The Department of Defense and all these agencies have to really take a good look to ensure that there's mitigation steps in place. So not everyone is being duped, not everyone is being leveraged, and that we safeguard the important information and facets that we need to for our day-to-day operations, for strategic reasons, and various other things.
It's why building the green internet is an important mission. What about you personally? Like, have you ever been affected by misinformation, whether it's, in your various roles in government or just in your personal life, or fake news spreading? And if so, like, can you just tell us a story about how it might have impacted you?
So yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces of that is, I mean, we're inundated with information now, and everything from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram to LinkedIn. We're always susceptible to that. I have a LinkedIn profile. I will tell you almost weekly, I'm getting a friend request from somebody that I would probably more than likely peg to be a foreign intelligence service, posing as someone from a consulting firm to somebody at a sports team, looking at some of my connections and trying to figure out what the best way to socially engineer me to accept and then ask questions is. So I've absolutely, and I think, a couple months ago, I'd written an article for the Irregular Warfare Center about an AI photo that was circulating around the internet about the Pentagon being attacked again.
Right,
The Dow dropped about $5 billion quickly. There was no quick response, and people, myself, calling people at the Pentagon and saying, "Hey, are you okay? What happened?" And a couple of hours later, it was finally a public affairs announcement came out that nope, that was not a real photo. Subsequently, since a couple of weeks ago, there was one of the Louvre on fire that was spreading around the internet, and this is just going to be more and more frequent. How do you verify that? How do you quickly ensure that what you're seeing is the truth and not something that you're being programmed with for targeting for misinformation, misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, we even saw the White House come out last week saying that, they want to release videos from the president that are cryptographically attested to be real because of this issue of like the need to have some sort of provenance for, you know, public figures messaging of important stuff.
Absolutely.
Just curious, wanting to just double click on the friend requests on LinkedIn. How do you discern, you know, the fact that you are being targeted? Like, are there signs that somebody can look for of like, oh yeah, wow, that's probably not a real person?
I think after a while, you start seeing the patterns or seeing what to look for.
Hmm.
Actually, I think LinkedIn did a great job. They partnered with Clear, the airport, identification company, and now you can get authentication badges on LinkedIn. And I think those are long overdue, quite frankly, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, and other platforms. But it's still going to happen. It's still going to be uh, targeted of people of interest, and a lot of people may not think they're people of interest, but our foreign adversaries want IP, our foreign adversaries want information, and they may not be coming to the person who holds the keys to the kingdom, but to the admin person or to the accounting person to then get in, a different way. So I think having that verification and understanding security and knowing what your 360 looks like is very important for that standpoint.
Well said. And what about information the other way? Has there ever been a time where you shared something online and maybe you're like, I shouldn't have shared that, or it felt like you shared something and somehow it got misinterpreted or miscommunicated because it was happening sort of through the lens of digital communication?
Talking about every one of my sports teams, yes. I think coming from my background a little bit, I'm very cautious about what I
Yeah.
share online, what I share in text. We do see the advent of some messaging apps that are supposed to be fully secure, but knowing that that's not the truth either, as many of them are not as secure as they say. So I think part of it is, no matter the encryption, no matter the two-way communications, three-way, however many, the person is the most important thing. So if you can't verify that person is on the other end of who you want that message going to, it's always a liability.
Right.
So, I see this with older people, such as my parents or my mother. They miss text all the time. They text the wrong person, or somebody is posing as me, or somebody is posing as somebody else to get information, and have taught them to now look for some of these signs. So I think as we move into more of an AI focused, deep fake type targeting of people, we have to ensure that the person is the most important key to that aspect, as I would say.
Well said, well said. And kind of zooming out a little bit, are there trends or are just from your perspective, are there trends that are happening in digital security that are kind of going to shape the future of online identity and safety? And are there maybe any, whether it's technology advancements or legal decisions that you're keeping an eye on that might affect sort of where we're going?
Uh, I'm more of a pessimist, so I'm going to say no, because the adversaries, criminals, people who want to use these things for illicit reasons are always ahead of the government. They're always ahead of laws. They're always ahead of fixes that can be put in place. But I think it's important to remember that we also need to stay at that level and push. It's a game of whack-a-mole, right? So once something's shut down, 20 more will pop up. Once we are able to figure out that this is the correct encryption, a new standard will come out. So I think it's always trying to be at the pace of our adversaries or of criminals or people who want to use this maliciously. And I think it's continuously building that. There's some laws that are being put in place, and they're great for us in the States, but a lot of our adversaries aren't here. A lot of
Right.
people are overseas. They don't have to abide by the same rules as us. So I think that's one difficult area that we'll have to tackle. I think there are certain things that can be put in place that would help mitigate some things. Verification, like I just said, is very important. Having authentication other ways other than two-step factor and some of these things that we generally do, I think we have to go to a new process. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can do. It's just how do we start targeting and tackling those issues?
Well said. And I mean, I guess sort of double clicking on the pessimism there, like what keeps you up at night? If you can kind of get into more potentially any specificity around like, man, like this is a scenario that would be bad, is there anything that you feel like sharing there?
There's a lot that keeps me up at night, to be quite honest. I think there's the introduction of AI is going to change things. Certainly, the introduction of access to mobile devices has definitely changed things. But I think it's the lack of knowledge of some of our leadership, some of the people who make the key decisions who don't know and don't
Yep.
know what could be put forward in some of these things. I can go on my iPhone right now, build a picture of, a catastrophic event somewhere, put it online. Within 15 minutes, probably spurn something up until people figure out that it's not real.
Yep.
What's going to happen during the elections? What's going to happen if there's a blackout again in New York City and someone uses that to the advantage of, we saw X amount of people blow up an electrical substation and now you have freakouts. So I think that's a big part of it. The other part that I actually worry about is the world of connectivity. My dishwasher has Wi-Fi. My dishwasher doesn't need Wi-Fi. Every other item now is connected. We don't need an internet of things for everything.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that there was like a DDoS attack of like 3 million toothbrushes or something last week, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because our adversaries or nefarious individuals know how to use and leverage that. I just read an interesting article about the Ukrainians are using acoustic sounds to identify drones. So if you're able to use Wi-Fi signals, Wi-Fi IPs, and think how much damage can you do? What can you track? How can you track?
Yeah.
What do you know? So I think that's a big piece that we don't realize how much information we actually give up. And I think that's what's kind of scary. Privacy is gone. I don't think there's privacy anymore, quite frankly. I think there's no such thing. And I think how is that going to affect, our day-to-day lives moving forward?
It seems like people are not operating within that paradigm, right? People still act like, oh, I sent a text message to this person, like they're the only person who's going to see it. But that's from your perspective, that's just not that should never be assumed now.
No, I mean, if it's on the internet, what's the old saying? It's public and it's there forever. Same with text messages, right? I mean, you can screenshot something, you can text forward something. So, I mean, I think understanding those aspects is very important for how you want to convey information, how you want to convey sensitive information, what you want to have, and go from, you look at HIPAA for medical issues. Hospitals and doctors' offices are some of the most vulnerable cyber targets out there. So if I'm a nefarious individual and I'm targeting somebody and I know where their doctor is, I can get their full medical record and I can figure things out and I can go from there. So I think there's a lot of areas that we take convenience over safety and security. And I think we have to start addressing some of those things.
Yeah, sort of the introduction maybe of some additional friction as a counterbalance.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, you mentioned sort of one of the big issues is the lack of awareness or lack of education on the part of some of our leaders. Are there efforts that you're aware of to help educate those leaders or to bring leaders up to speed? We see obviously our political system is slightly dysfunctional these days. Do you have any thoughts or feelings about that?
Can't teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, you have senators.
That's like a multi-layered statement right there.
Yeah. You have senators, congressmen who don't know how dial-up internet works versus fiber. You're never going to be able to educate them to that level. You have younger ones who do.
Right.
And I think education starts from now. I think education starts when it comes to K to 12. We're going to have to start educating kids of how to spot disinformation or deep fakes or things from there. Sweden just put a whole curriculum into their schools about how to do that.
Oh, wow. So there's like media literacy curricula.
Yep. So, but I also think politically here, some people don't want that. I mean, they want to be able to use some of these things to their political advantages. And we see it all the time of, hey, here's a photo of X. That photo was actually from 10 years ago. And, or it's a recent political ad for one of the parties. They had an AI photo and someone noticed 6 fingers on one hand. And that's how they said this is a fake photo. Yeah. So I think there's also that aspect of it as well that, not everyone wants it.
Yeah, the sort of the incentives within the system are not to have a super media literate populace, right? Yeah. Where it's like people you want people malleable, I guess, from the perspective of some of the leadership.
That's a big reason they take people's phones for closed door fundraisers, because they don't want to hear what some of these people are actually saying to their big donors. And it's going to happen in boardrooms soon enough. It's going to happen in coaches' locker rooms soon enough. And
Hmm.
You don't want an active microphone and camera with you everywhere when you want to talk about sensitive things. So I think, that's going to become a challenge as well.
Yeah. Fascinating. Crazy. Scary. I mean, you are, as you said, a pessimist, and I think I am as well. There's a lot of things that keep me up at night as well, but I don't think there's a point of doing the work that we do without having some kind of hope, some vision of a brighter future. So I guess to sort of close out, what does keep you hopeful? Are there projects? Are there people? Are there ideas that give you some hope for the future?
An old adage is hope is not a plan, but
Hmm.
I am looking on the bright side that there's smarter people than myself and many others who are looking at this. I'm in awe of organizations like DARPA and like NASA, the NSA, Cyber Command that have the 1,000-pound brains working on some of this. I think civil service needs to come back as well. I think we need good people in some of these places. Everyone's fascinated working for the Googles and Apples of the world, but we need just as many people at, government agencies. And I think that's where some of these changes will come from. And I think there will be some sort of correction. And I don't know what it'll be, but I think at some point it may become too much and people are going to start recognizing that and wanting to address it. And hopefully it's not for a catastrophic reason. Hopefully it's just something that, Taylor Swift's AI photos got leaked and all of a
Right.
sudden there's a congressional hearing about it. I mean, unfortunate it takes that, but what could be next? Could it be one of our politicians AI saying something about a conflict that then leads actually to some sort of bigger conflict, and understanding that what effect these things can have and understanding what we could do about it.
Got it. Well said. Well, Mo, always love talking to you. You're one of my favorite people, and I'm really grateful to have you join today. And definitely we'll post your blogs and stuff in the show notes and make sure people can find some of your writing and all the stuff you're doing.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.